Greetings out there in YouTube land. This is Morris, man, and as always, I thank you guys for coming to my channel. Today, I'm going to do a pretty interesting video. It's more so a commentary as opposed to an overview or a review, because when a lot of times people talk about musical projects or musical instruments, they go into the specs and all that. I'm not going to give you all that. I'm going to give you my commentary on what I think of them and their capabilities. So, this video is entitled "The Tale of Three Drum Machines," and I'm going to discuss my old reliable, which is the Alesis HR16. Then I'm going to talk to you about the Akai XR20 Beat Production Center and the Boss Dr. Groove 202. So I'm going to start off by saying this. There once was a time, because drum machines been around since actually about the late 60s. And they became kind of modern in the, I would say somewhere in the 80s, where you can actually store lab drum sounds and program them very well. And initially, drum machines were for this purpose. They were for the musician, and what I mean by definition musician is somebody that can actually play an instrument and play it well. And it was just to keep the beat when the drummer wasn't around. And basically just drum sounds, and you just program your drums to, the rhythm you want, and, you off to the races. And then somewhere, I would probably say in the 90s, they started adding bass patches. And I'm like, I can play bass. I just need a drum pattern. I don't need to program a bass line into my drum machine, because most professional musicians know when they go into the studio and experience the studio experience, you want to separate everything you want to separate as much as possible, meaning that you want your drums on a separate track. You want to kind of separate your drums if you can. You want your snare on one track, you want your kick on another track, hi-hats and percussions. And the reason being is when they're separate, you can kind of tune in on their frequency, add certain effects, because you might want a little reverb on your snare if you're doing a ballad, but you don't never want reverb on your bass. So if you got a drum machine that has all of that stuff, and you can't really do a separate out as far as okay, I can kick the bass pattern out on track one in the studio on a recording machine, then you kind of SOL. It defeats the purpose, because you don't want all that stuff dumped into one track, because they got different frequencies. But I'm not gonna really get into the recording aspect. But so all of a sudden here comes the bass stuff, and then with this drum machine, and this is a drum machine. I love the sounds, but I hate the way it's designed, because the way that they design drum machines now is for people that really can't play, people that kind of want to rap and build tracks, which ain't nothing wrong with that. But the problem is, for the musician now, it's like this one is kind of useless to me, because I try to make a long story short and try to make this coherent. I only need the drum sounds in here. I don't need the bass patches. I don't need the little guitar samples. I don't need the little piano samples. So when I try to hook up this to my MIDI controller, meaning my keyboard, where when I'm writing a track, that when I hit, the record button, it would, I MIDI them up, and this becomes the slave, and I trigger the rhythm, from the master controller. But the problem is the MIDI signal in here starts to talk to the keyboard, which it doesn't supposed to do. And now I got bass patches on the keyboard when I only want my piano patches, which is what I brought up. So I went through like an hour trying to get, turn it down and get rid of it. And it kept coming back, because they're designed, unfortunately, not for just the avid or the novice rapper, and or singer. Actually, I won't even say singer. This is just basically a poor man's MP60, where you get all these other things other than drums, and you just rapping over all of these little sample pieces you put in. But for just the traditional musician, this is a nightmare. I actually had two of these. The first one, I got so frustrated, I just sold. I'm like, what? I ain't got time to spend 3 weeks trying to work on learning curve. Then I went back and got another one, because I'm like, I do like the sounds, and maybe, I need to be a little more patient. I should have just stuck with the first man and just left this alone, because again, this drum machine got all this other stuff in here, and I only simply want a drum beat. That's it. I don't want any drum bass patches or samples. So unfortunately, the market is gearing towards quote unquote again dabblers. Where I can rap and I just need some a machine that's gonna give me some dope beats, and then I'm gonna put my own bass line up in here and some other little samples and some horns and string stuff and call it a day. As opposed to back in the day, just needed a dedicated drum machine to replace, or should I say, sit in for the drummer when the drummer is not around. So unfortunately, I'm pretty disappointed with this. I mean, I love the sounds in here, and then it's overkill. It's like 500, I think, uh, maybe 200 drum programs. I don't need that many. Once I work on a track, I just kind of delete it after a while. It's not going to sit in here for 3 years, and I can download it to another source, and if I need to bring it back in here. And then it got like 700 sounds, which is cool. I'm like, and I'm not complaining about the sounds, but you know, again, these drum machines nowadays are designed for, I guess, rappers, hip hop people. Not so much working class musicians that want to write a composition in the middle of the night because they got an idea and their drummer's not around. So it's kind of unfortunate that this machine is extremely non-user friendly. But my HR16, to this day, I still write in here. The sounds are dated, but I trigger new sounds like these sounds into here. And then I write my program, because that's another problem with that. The way that the Alesis is set up, I write a program and then I make a copy of it, because now with the copy I want to put my crashes and my accents, because I don't want a drum beat to just run for 6 minutes with no variation at all. You want your crashes there like a real drummer would do, signifying that you're coming out of the verses into the chorus. So the drum's supposed to reflect these changes. So that's why I would make a copy, and then after making a copy, I can chain it together in song pattern. So when the song is playing, the crashes are in the places they are, as opposed to the new lazy man's way. I just want to change it on the fly. I'm like, that's fine when you're not doing nothing else, but when you're doing something else and still adding parts, you want your drum pattern to, do its thing and not be assisted by doing a on the fly live thing, so that's why I still use this drum machine. I love it. And I think the very first drum machine that kind of incorporated hip hop and current R&B stuff in their sampling machine was the Boss. Because before the Boss, it was just more or less the Alesis. And the Alesis got real clean pop type of drum sounds and snares, but when you're working with trying to do a new jack swing type of stuff, and kind of, as they say, dirty sounds, this was the first drum machine to say, we get it, so we're going to give you what you need, as opposed to everybody can't afford a $2,000 Akai MP60 and sample their own gritty snares off of vinyl. So I think this was the first drum machine to address that issue. And I love this drum machine because I look on eBay and I see people selling, the Roland TR 808 and 909 for $3,000. And I'm like, the only reason why somebody would pay that kind of outrageous money just to say, I got one, that's it. Because the programmability is extremely outdated. The sounds are still being used, but now, they sample those exact same sounds in machines like this. This machine got 909 sounds, got 808 sounds. So why would I pay $3,000 for a dinosaur that I can't really program other than say, I got it, I got one. And that's just, it's ridiculous. It's numbing marketing nonsense. But we get caught up in that because the marketing people do an extremely good job in getting your money and getting more of your money than they deserve to get. So this drum machine, I love it. It has a lot of you can do a lot of stuff. You can do the kind of the Dre type of productions, the definitely the house stuff, definitely the jungle and bass and drum stuff. So to me, this is one of the best drum machines that was ever made. And then it was one of the first drum machines that also, if you don't want to do electricity thing, throw some batteries in here and it'll run off batteries. So these are some pretty good drum machines. Like I said, unfortunately, now drum machines are more or less I can do everything for you. You know, you can tap in your bass line, you can add these other stuff in here and all that. And I'm like, I just want a drum machine to keep rhythm and give me some funky drum sounds, you know. But again, the market is changing. There are more people, you know, doing music now that weren't doing it before, because the majority of the musicians, you know, for many decades were musicians, and now you got a lot of people just dabbling with one hand and sampling stuff. And I'm not trying to call people out or be negative. I'm just stating fact. So the industry figured that they're going to cater more to those people than the people that are musicians and say, hey, I just need a straightforward drum machine with nice drum sounds and write a program. That's all I want to do. I don't want to play my bass line and my drum machine and all that, because you become kind of limited when you're doing that little pad thing as opposed to a bass or a synthesized bass, you know. So that's just how the market is going, you know, and it's just unfortunate because there should be, again, drum machines that have just straightforward drums. It's like, if this is all you want to do and you can play and you just want to have a rhythm behind your playing, we still got you. As opposed to, again, you know, this Akai. Because again, I love this thing. I mean, the sounds are just unbelievable, but it's so jacked up with bass lines and all this other stuff. You know, it's just very difficult to you know, to work with. Because again, and I'm gonna say this, and sorry for being redundant, but like I said, when I use this for my MIDI setup, well, actually, I can't use it for my MIDI setup because, again, this thing is triggering bass patches on my keyboard parts, and it's like I don't want any bass. I try to turn it down, and when I turn it down, I look up, it pops back up. I mean, I wish there was a button where you could just mute out all these other so-called instrument parts and just have your drums in here, you know. But this was a good idea as far as the sounds, but it was not a good idea as far as, you know, all the other stuff. And again, these drum machines, this one, well, more so this one, extremely hard to try to write a drum program, because again, it's not geared towards musicians that are trying to write out a whole drum program. It's geared towards guys that just want a beat for 6 minutes and no variation, or you go back and do overdubs. I'm like, I don't want to do overdubs. I want to put everything in the track as it plays, you know. So I don't think I got to do is hit the start button and step back, and I've already programmed it from start to finish, from every crescendo, every variation has already been programmed, and I'm done, you know. But unfortunately, again, the new drum machines, they don't keep that in mind, you know. So it's unfortunate, but I just thought I would do this video because, you know, I think it's pretty interesting to kind of talk about things like this. So until next time, take care.